So you may have just inherited a home and found out it has solar on it, and you're wondering what the heck you're supposed to do. That's why I have Rachel here with me today to help us dispel some of the rumors, understand what the reality of it is, and what solar looks like for people who inherited a property with a lease solar system on it. Hey, Rachel, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so, like I said, this person just inherited a home. They found out there's a solar lease on it. What the heck do they do?
Yeah, so the first thing that you're going to want to do is confirm that it is a lease. You want to pull up the solar agreement, assuming it is a lease, see what kind of lease it is, make sure that it's not a loan or a purchase. But lease systems, they're usually going to require you to actually formally assume the lease and make sure that it gets transferred into your name. And that's going to be with a credit check and paperwork. And so you're going to want to make sure that you do assume that lease so that you can keep up on the payments and then transfer that lease if you do decide to sell the home in the future. Because if you don't do that, it could really derail the selling process. With a lease, there are things that are tied directly to the title of the home. So you want to make sure that all of that is in order so that you could transfer that to the new homeowner or assume the lease yourself if you're going to be staying in the home.
Awesome. And then, with that said, this isn't something that's absolutely scary. A lot of the ones that I've seen, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you're assuming the lease and you hear credit check, some people may think, like, great, is this going to be another hit on my credit? Is this going to be challenging to get if you don't have the best credit? What does that really look like? Because some of them that I'm seeing, they're saying we can waive the credit check for like $250. It's pretty inexpensive, so it almost seems like it's more of a formality than something that's make it or break it or going to ruin anything. Can you elaborate
Yeah,
on that?
Yeah, for sure. If it's a inheritance, there might be some ways around actually getting the credit check. That's different than if you're just originally going and getting the lease on your own and not inheriting it. So as you mentioned, there are options to do a waived credit check for $250 and make sure that you can seamlessly get it in your name so that it isn't a make or break and there can be a seamless process to get it in your name and continue to move forward because you didn't necessarily know you were going to get the solar lease, right? So how could you know that there were certain things you'd have to think about in terms of your credit and assuming it?
Yeah, and that is one thing that's actually kind of scary with the solar leases. If we could go into like kind of the not so good about solar for a minute, is
Yeah.
there's two ways of paying for the system. And then myself being in real estate, I prefer the owning it where you get a personal loan or you pay for it out of pocket if you're able to afford that. And then some people like the lease and they like the lease because it gets maintained by the company, but
Right.
they also don't notice that the lease payments can increase every year. And also they're tied in that. And even if they want to sell, that next buyer would have to be agreeable to the terms of that. And we've seen
Hmm.
some where the solar lease, quite frankly, sucks.
Yeah.
And it's not that good to get into. So, like, do you have options with that? Or what does payoff look like? Can you pay it off early, even if it's a lease? Walk us down that path a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it'd be helpful, I can also talk about some of the pros and cons of leasing versus buying. But to your question about if you can pay it off early, pretty much all solar leases have a payout option of after 5 years, you can own the system for no penalty, meaning that after 5 years, you can, at a fair market value, decide to purchase the system. There are options to pay it off before the 5 years. There sometimes might be a penalty incurred for that, but that can still be a good option. And a lot of times that might be waived actually if you're choosing to sell the home early or there's a extenuating circumstance. So that's a little bit of what it can look like if you do decide to do that process. And we can definitely talk through kind of these pros and cons of leasing versus buying because there's a lot of considerations to think of. But to your point, in general, it is the most seamless if you are going to sell the home that the solar is already paid off.
Okay, awesome. And then if people have questions with this and they need an actual solar professional that can help them navigate this, how do they get in touch with you?
Yes, they can reach out to me. They can reach out to me directly. My direct number is 760-271-5398. They can text or call me. I'm always happy to help with any of these solar questions. The other thing that can be really helpful is I offer complimentary service of doing a solar evaluation so that if you're selling a home or wanting to buy it and you want to know from a third party a fair market evaluation of the pricing of the system. That's also something that I'm happy to do.
What happens if you inherit this home with solar and you decide you're going to do nothing?
hmm Yeah, well, I wouldn't recommend doing nothing. But let's say you did decide, someone decided to do nothing and it is a solar lease. So what at minimum is going to start to happen is that there's going to start to potentially be some interest on the payments and those are going to accrue over time. And then the lease, while it might not be tied directly to your credit because you're not the one who purchased the home, it is tied directly to the title of the home because pretty much all solar leases you have to file a UCC1 filing, which happens to do with the title of the home. So if there's something that is a lien against the home and you haven't dealt with it and you go to sell it, you're going to have trouble selling the home because you're potentially not going to be able to transfer that title. And it's just going to be a huge red flag when a potential buyer is looking at it. So there's a lot that can happen, and you could potentially lose the value of that home in a way. And at a minimum, the solar company can come and remove the panels, but they're probably not going to spend their time going out and doing that. They're more going to come after you financially first, unfortunately.
There's a few times where I wish they would come out and remove the panels from a home. Like, I'll tell
Yeah.
you straight up, I've had those situations.
Yeah.
I've even had some where I've told them to do that.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
and they get really upset with you really quick.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it seems like one of the biggest issues with this problem, if you decide to do nothing, is that, maybe you decide like, hey, I inherited this home. I'm not going to do anything because I'm going to live in it and it's not my problem. But then what if you decide to do something, or even if you're settling the estate, whether it's a probate or a trust, you still have to do the notice to creditors. And the solar lease is a creditor. So you still have to let them know that this person died and make right on the debt. There have been a few circumstances where we see that the solar company doesn't want to transfer the lease, or the new buyer wants the seller to pay off that lease solar before they transfer title because they don't want solar,
hmm
which kind of creates some problems. So I'd say if we could say three things for people to do, and you can add on more if you see any that I don't catch, is when you inherit a home that has solar, feel free to reach out to us. I mean, it's
Yeah.
free. It's not going to be harmful or dangerous or scary, but we can help guide you and know what you need to do and what you need to look for. We may even be able to help you if you can't find any of the solar paperwork. Number two, you want to call the solar company just to confirm that they have the system, find out if they're the one servicing the lease or if it's someone else, and confirm what you're seeing, or confirm that it's there if you're not able to find the paperwork. And number three, schedule a strategy call with us. We can go over what that looks like, how it will affect the sale or the transfer of your property, or how it would look if you decide to move in. So it's super easy. Three simple steps. Solar can be difficult, but it's not scary. Just give us a call, 760-697-5661. Thank you.